Welcome to the Political Insider. Let's talk about the budget. Tomorrow is a very, very big day. We are going to hear the budget being presented by the Minister of Finance. Now, let's cast our minds back to a year ago when the budget ended up being the war of the Government of National Unity, when all of the other parties in the Government of National Unity said no to the budget that was meant to be presented by the Minister of Finance, and they made him redo it. And then he came back, they made him redo it again. And it proved to be quite an important moment for South Africa, because it was that moment that it felt like the ANC had to begin to respect its GNU partners. It hasn't gone all the way, but it went some way, especially on finance. Now, tomorrow we have the second budget of the Government of National Unity being presented by the Minister of Finance. And if the medium-term budget statement, which came out towards the end of 2025, is anything to go by, there was clearly consultation on that, and everybody seemed to agree on the budget. So, against that backdrop, one would imagine that all the parties have said their say, and the budget should be a representation of what the Government of National Unity kind of agrees on. I say kind of because they're never going to agree on 100% of the things. But let's talk about what we can expect. Now, the real problem with the budget is that South Africa understand we choose to go down the road of no economic growth. This is government policy. We've got too much red tape, we've got bureaucracy, ideology, everything standing in the way of business. Plus, we've got some physical constraints. We have no electricity, we have no water. Those two things will stop any country from growing. It's impossible to grow if you don't have excess electricity and a steady flow of water. So understand that it's against this that we're going into a budget, knowing that, to put it in the terms of the private individual, you are never getting an increase or a bonus. There is nothing there that you are doing that'll put you in line for an increase. And that's what the minister has to work with. Very, very little economic growth. So where do we find ourselves? Well, we find ourselves in a world that's been changed. It's been changed by Donald Trump and his tariffs, where he has gone and slapped tariffs on the rest of the world, and suddenly everybody in the world has had to go out there and fend for themselves. There's no big market in the US just prepared to mop up exports. South Africa, we're having a whale of a time because we had the AGOA deal in place, which meant we could sell our finished products to America. They would get them without tariffs, which meant that the South African products were a lot cheaper. We now have tariffs of 15%. The rest of our competitor countries have got tariffs of 10%. Now, South Africa is a middle-income country, largely because we still get a lot of income because of our mining activities. Other middle-income countries are signing bilateral deals. South Africa is yet to sign one single bilateral deal. I'll give you an example. We have been negotiating with India to do a bilateral deal, a deal that works for India and works for South Africa. This has been discussed for 10 years. 10 years. And we are no closer to signing a bilateral deal. In that time, India has signed 4 bilateral deals. With America, with Europe, with China, they go out and do deals. South Africa, we find reasons not to do deals. So, it just goes to show you that we have a problem within that Ministry of Trade and Industry. We have also gone out of our way to antagonize countries that we would do deals with, largely the US. We know, and the president doubled down in his State of the Nation address where he stressed sovereignty, which is just another way of saying we are not going to make it easy to do any business with the US. It's costing us money. Right, now the budget is imminent and our finances are in a mess. We have maxed out the country's credit card. We can't get access to more loans. We are paying more than R1 billion a day in interest on our loans. And that number is increasing dramatically. We are not even paying back the capital on our loans. And this is obviously another constraint. We spend our money poorly, right, from an economic perspective. Of course, it's important that we make sure that people aren't starving to death. But that is not helping the economy much. You know, the difference between a loaf of bread purchased by somebody who's very hungry and somebody who goes to a restaurant is massive. That loaf of bread does create some economic activity. You need someone to bake it, somebody to sell it, etc., etc. But a restaurant, there's a whole lot more links in that particular chain that help the economy along the way. So we have left it in the hands of our failed former mayor of Johannesburg, Parks Tau, who is now the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. And he explained that he's got a butterfly strategy where it fans out from Africa to the east to the west. Buddy, just do something. Really, you can give it a fancy name, but do a deal with somebody. Do some business. But that minister, it seems to be the only thing that he is quite enthusiastic about is his 100 billion rand BEE transformation fund, which will not add 1% to our growth rate in the country. Really, it's the country financing entrepreneurs to buy existing business from existing people because you've decided that some South Africans aren't South African enough. That is really what is going to happen with this transformation fund. It will not move the needle on economic growth. Now, we can only criticize, and as we should, the lack of ambition, the lack of urgency. Half the country don't understand the dignity of being able to make a decent living. Instead, they have to rely on the handout of the state, social relief of distress grant of less than 400 rand a month, instead of growing jobs. Why does the state do it? Because it makes it very difficult in the minds of those people getting a grant to vote for another party, because they feel that their one lifeline, the one thing keeping them alive, might disappear and they might starve to death. So there's no doubt, there can be little doubt that the ANC uses this as a dull weapon to get the few votes that it gets. But there's a bigger problem, and that is that, as I've made the point many times, our Ministry of Trade, Industry and Competition, which is possibly the most important ministry in the country, has been stuck in the 1980s, and it's been the one place that we have put our worst ministers. Do you remember Alec Irwin, the leather elbow patch wearing, pipe smoking professor whose response to the growing problem in electricity was to say that people were sabotaging the power plants? Rob Davies, then followed by Ibrahim Patel, the man whose ideas was to ban open-toed shoes during COVID. These are people that hate trade, they hate industry, they are communists, dyed-in-the-wool communists, and they are prisoners of their failed ideology. So they're gone now. You got somebody who's not much better that's replaced them. But the people that haven't been replaced are the people that work in the Department of Trade, Industry and Commerce. These are the same people that were brought up and employed through the era of Irwin, Davies, Patel. They are 1980s people occupying these positions in a 21st century world. And it is not very ideologically appropriate. You are living in a vibrant new world where stuff moves at the speed of light. We talk about the fourth industrial revolution. We talk about AI. Our Ministry of Trade, Industry and Competition still works on paper. Then we are still prisoners of a relic from apartheid called the South African Customs Union. This was a methodology that the government of the day brought in to keep the neighboring states under control. The custom unions include those other economic giants: Botswana, population 2 million, Lesotho, that little enclosed homeland, Eswatini, population nothing, Namibia, one big desert. And we have to share all of our tariff revenues equally with those countries, despite the fact that they don't comprise nowhere near 10% of our economy. They still have a say on our economic policy. They get to decide which country leads a negotiation. You might have an important negotiation and it's led by Namibia to decide the fate of a trade relation which, let's face it, has only to do with South Africa because these places have very little industry. Every single point in an agreement must be agreed by all countries in the South African custom unions. Can you believe that? Right? Really, that thing should have been dismissed in 1994, but yet we still have it to this day. Then we have something that was started with the best intentions called NEDLAC, the National Economic and Labour Council. The idea here was that this was a process to draft all agreements and reach consensus. I love that word, consensus. Imagine if you ran most businesses by consensus, you'd make no decisions. And they want to reach consensus between business and labor. What agreement can you reach? Business wants to maximize profits. Labor wants to maximize costs. It's very, very difficult to reach those agreements. This thing started in good faith. It's ended up as just an unnecessary blockage. So, what we are saying is that, as in so many other facets of our life, our government has failed to move with the times. What may have been appropriate in 1994 is not appropriate in 2026. The modern world requires speed and agility, and we just do not have it. We put diplomacy and ideology ahead of economics. And that's great. You can die with your ideology because you can't get to eat it, right? How does a modern economy and a modern country negotiate trade deals with this kind of landscape? The simple answer is you don't. The minister has got a game on his hands to do the budget. He's going to do a little bit of tinkering around. He's going to try and keep everyone happy as he does. It's not going to be successful. And it's all because we're being let down by a Ministry of Trade and Industry that is out of their depth. And just think that in the Government of National Unity negotiations, the DA were offered this portfolio of trade, industry, and competition and turned it down. I'll let that sink in for a while. The DA could be in charge of our economic policy, but they had other problems that they were trying to solve. Let's talk about a probe at Home Affairs. SIU is about to arrest 4 officials. Now listen to this. This is a beautiful story. These people earned less than 25,000 Rand a month, but yet they received 16 million Rand in direct deposits. Basically, they were selling permanent residence and passports and all the other stuff that you have at Home Affairs. As the investigation into the permanent residence permit of Shepherd Bushiri found, it had been approved by somebody who belonged to his church. While we're talking about religious people behaving badly, how about Pastor Timothy Omatoso, the guy who was found guilty of rape? His pathway to South Africa was riddled with fraud and misrepresentation. He obtained a fraudulent work permit, issued in a country of which he was not a citizen, based on an unauthorized directive. Now, there is no doubt that all of these movements happened only because of the great work and energy that Minister Leon Schreiber from the Democratic Alliance has given to the post that used to be reserved for the dullest of the dull ANC ministers, and it was a big factor in South Africa being on the grey list. So some good news there. I want to end off with dead man walking. Yesterday, the Madlanga Commission heard from Shadrack Sibiya, desperate to try and downplay his ties with Kat Matlala, but the evidence goes the other way. He invited Matlala to his son's very intimate engagement party, of which he had only had 20 people at that event. But of the 20 people, 2 were other police generals. Right now, either Sibiya is complicit in criminality or is the worst policeman in the history of policemen, because he seemingly seemed to be the only one that didn't know who Kat Matlala was. he has this party for his son, and decides to invite Kat Matlala. Why? Because Kat Matlala's wife happens to be there. His wife Tsakani, who happens to be a good friend of General Sandra Malebe Tima, who is also a fantastic character, only in South Africa. This was a lady who was fired from the police. She wasn't. She actually resigned from the police in 2015 because she was facing charges linked to the Life Esidimeni scandal, which killed 144 people. She headed up the SAP's basic police development. But on the side, she had a business called Rabafeni Victim Empowerment Center, which received 270,000 to take 100 patients under the scheme, which killed many of those people. She resigned, as I said, to avoid charges of misconduct. But never mind, this is South Africa. So she was re-employed by acting police commissioner 3 years later. Khomotso Pahlani re-employed her in 2016 and promptly promoted her from brigadier to general. She was at the same meeting that Sibiya had invited Kat Matlala to. Oh, and by the way, she also faces a probe by the Western Cape Human Rights Commission for racially abusing police recruits in 2016. The other general that was there was this wonderful General Hilda Sentamula, who just happened to be gifted a Brazilian butt lift by Kat Matlala, being done by Dr. Pert and paid for by Kat Matlala. He seems like a nice guy, Kat Matlala. He went to this engagement party and left and decided just to give Shadrack Sibiya 300,000 rand. This man is going to jail, and it's not a moment too soon. South Africa needs to clean up, and I think we're tired of these stories and tired of people like Sibiya and these other generals who are at this intimate party of just a few friends, very senior policemen and very senior criminals. This is exactly what Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was talking about when he made his earth-shattering press conference back in July of last year. Thank you so much for joining us on Political Insider. Please subscribe to the channel, and we will see you again soon. The next State of the Nation breakfast is upon us, and it's going to feature the one and only Helen Zille, the DA mayoral candidate for Johannesburg. This breakfast takes place on the 6th of March at the Tryst in Kramerville in Sandton. If you want to join us, go to our website, sona.co.za, or find the details in the description below.